In terms of the grand jury testimony that's now been released, the fact that Donald Trump, according to Senator Graham, would believe that Martians stole the election, what does that tell you about Trump's state of mind?
That statement is consistent with what we found in our investigation, in that our investigation revealed that Donald Trump was not looking for honest answers about whether there was fraud in the election. He was looking for ways to stay in power. And when people told him things that conflicted with him staying in power, he rejected them, or he chose not even to contact people like that who would know if the election was done properly in the state. On the other hand, when individuals would say things that would allow him to stay in power, no matter how fantastical, he would latch on to those. That pattern, over time, we felt was powerful evidence that he, in fact, knew that the fraud claims he was making were false.
Andrew Weissmann, in 100 years, when they come back and they try to understand these times, they're going to have to deal with this, that there was actual sworn testimony from an actual sitting senator that claimed, quote, Donald Trump would believe that Martians stole the elections. That's a quote from Lindsey Graham testifying under oath in front of a grand jury in the Georgia case. Jack Smith then, I think that might be the closest he comes to maybe cracking a smile, testifies under oath that statement is consistent with what we found in our investigation. Our investigation revealed that Donald Trump was not looking for honest answers, to the point that he would believe that Martians stole the elections, that this is where we are. Just feels like another break glass moment. Your thoughts on what was shared for the first time with the public today? You're on mute, my friend. We're going to wait. Can you hear us? Okay, we're going to fix Andrew Weissmann's mic.
How's that?
Oh, there we go. There you are.
Okay. You know what? Taking away my fancy microphone. That's what did it.
So fancy. I loved it.
So let me just be serious for a moment. I think that at a moment like this, to get through it, it is important to have leaders and role models. And I think that's what Jack Smith did today. I agree completely with Tim. And I wanted to just channel my inner Rachel Maddow for a moment and just read what he said at the end of his opening statement, because I think that's what he wanted us to understand and know and to take away from this day. He said, adherence to the rule of law is not a partisan concept or endeavor. My fear is that we have seen the rule of law function in this country for so long that many of us have come to take it for granted. But the rule of law is not self-executing. It depends on our collective commitment to apply it. It requires dedicated service on behalf of others, especially when that service is difficult and comes with costs. Our willingness to pay those costs is what tests and defines our commitment to the rule of law and to this wonderful country. And I think that is what Jack Smith and his team did for this country. I think it's what Jack Smith did today. That is the message that he is sending to the many, many people, Republicans, Democrats, independents, people with no party, but who believe in the rule of law and truth, that you need to be committed to it, and it can come with costs.
Well, Alex Wagner, I think that if we really put this testimony in its place on a spectrum, right, of healthy rule of law to no rule of law, we're a lot closer to the no rule of law side in terms of what our president and our Department of Justice believes. As he was testifying and when he finished, Donald Trump called for his criminal prosecution. And Jack Smith himself said he expected to be attempts to be prosecuted.
Yeah, I was struck. First of all, Trump's nicknames usually have some basis in reality, or there's something that there's some nodule on which they hang. The idea that Jack Smith is deranged is completely without basis, right? The idea that this dispassionate, eloquent, really professional steward of the law is anything other than, I mean, I think the paragon of justice and what we should strive for in our prosecutors. I don't know where Trump got that nickname, but it certainly, obviously it doesn't hold. But beyond that, it was such a study in contrast, right? Like the utter unseriousness of the Trump Justice Department with Kash Patel and Pam Bondi atop of it, and Lindsay Halligan, people like Lindsay Halligan being recruited to be a U.S. attorney, someone who failed spectacularly at the witch hunt that Donald Trump dispatched her on, in contrast to someone like Jack Smith, who really, and I'm with Dan Goldman on this, this was the first time a lot of Americans heard from Jack Smith, though Andrew Weissman conducted a very newsworthy interview with him. This is, in terms of our domestic audience, this is the first time they've heard from this man, and he was so rigorous in his discipline, and he was so, he listened to people tell him that he is responsible for the destruction of democracy. It takes an extraordinary character to withstand the pressure that he was under and remains under, to sit there with, a serious expression as people launch these deeply personal, completely baseless attacks on him to great peril while he's in the crosshairs of the president of the United States. I mean, I was just struck by how tragic it is that person, Jack Smith, is now the person who's under scrutiny. And the people that are holding the sort of flaming, whatever you call them, torches to hunt him down are these just utterly incapable, craven fools that have been sent to do their jobs by Donald Trump. I mean, I don't know, Nicole, I want to try and find something optimistic in this. I guess I'm glad that people like Jack Smith exist, but I was so bereft watching someone like that give testimony, given where we are in terms of our Justice Department today.
Andrew Weissman had a reaction like Alex's, I also think that the idea that facts are at war with disinformation and lies, to me, misses it. Like the disinformation and the lies prevailed at least a year ago, and the facts lost, and they're paying the price in the indictment or the attempts to indict, or the indictment of Jim Comey, the 3 attempts to indict Tish James. The judge called it a masquerade, an insurance lawyer masquerading as a U.S. attorney. Jack Smith, to me, reminded me of something Mark Carney said yesterday, that, and look, I don't know him the way you all do, but, nostalgia isn't a plan. I felt, or I heard everything he said today as a wake-up call and a warning that we better decide which we want, this banana republic that they have no shame ushering in, or free and fair elections in a democracy, which is what is on the line in November. Is that, am I laying too much onto him, Andrew Weissman?
No, absolutely. I think that is exactly, excuse me, I think that's exactly what he was saying in its opening and throughout. This is going to be hard. And just to make matters worse, the people who were doing Donald Trump's bidding today were people in large measure who lived through January 6th, who were saying things that they know from their own personal experience is not true.
Right.
No one with a straight face who lived through January 6th can say that they thought there weren't serious crimes there that deserve to be prosecuted. In fact, Democrats today pointed out over and over again the number of people who were sitting there cross-examining Jack Smith who had said the exact opposite when January 6th had happened, how these people had to be held to account for what they did. And then when Jack Smith comes and does that, to use Alex's term, they cravenly turn around. So there's no question this is going to be a daunting task. And I think that is why Jack Smith said it is really a time to stand up, and it comes at a cost, and you need to be fearless. And I think the best thing that Jack Smith did today is exemplifying that courage in his demeanor and his words and his truth throughout the day.